Matthew, what is the worst case scenario for the Conservatives in the hypothetical scenario of a 2024 election? What do you reckon? Autumn 24, most likely, perhaps spring. What's the worst that can happen?
Well, the worst, Mark, as you say, is a total wipeout on the scale of 1997, if not even worse. And if you look at the numbers that I'm looking at in our People poll each week, it does indeed look like the Conservatives are currently heading in that direction. Rishi Sunak's favourability ratings, his leadership ratings, are heading south. Only 23% of the country feel favourably towards him. The Conservatives have lost ownership of the economy. They're not seen as levelling up. They're no longer seen as bringing control to Britain's borders. And more generally, they're no longer seen as having much of a purpose. So the challenge facing Sunak is enormous. The voters have clearly tuned out. Whenever I mention the Conservative Party in focus groups, they roll their eyes and are frequently saying they're sick of the party being in office for this long and Britain having this many problems. So I do actually think that this is pretty much as close as you can get to being an existential crisis for the Conservative Party, and one that I suspect may yet come to deliver an almighty shock at the next election.
Now, Rishi Sunak, as you well know, Matthew, has a 5-point plan. Boost growth, cut the debt, fix the NHS waiting lists, halve inflation and stop the boats. Will delivery on those issues, or at least progress on those issues, move the dial for him? Because I do think he's identified the 5 key areas. At least he knows what he's got to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think as I mentioned in the Substack this week, if you talk to people in and around Rishi Sunak, they will tell you that their only path to victory is what they call narrow but steep. So they are essentially convinced that if Sunak delivers on these 5 pledges, cutting inflation, reducing the number of small boats, cutting waiting lists in hospitals, and reducing inflation, that he will essentially be able to say to the country, look, things are improving. We're over the worst. Don't let the Labour Party ruin it. That will essentially be the strategy for 24. The problem, though, as you know better than most listening to your viewers and listeners, is a lot of the country simply don't believe he's going to do that. They don't think the government is going to stop the small boats. They don't think the government is levelling up the country. And inflation may fall. Indeed, it is already falling, but it's unlikely to fall to the levels that Sunak is probably going to need it to fall to in order for people to feel a tangible difference to their weekly shop and to their energy bills and so on. So, you know, the mountain facing him is simply enormous. No party has ever come back from this low in the polls to win the next election. And his only hope, as I've told people around him, is that essentially the external climate begins to change in his favour.
Was that the Prime Minister? Did it say Rishi Sunak mob? If so, I'll let you take that call.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Unfortunately not.